Good evening, welcome, 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 welcome. It's great to have everyone here. Thank you for joining our last and final part of this very special Shabbos and Sunday, as we might call it, our uplifting Shabbos Slichos pre-Rosh Hashana weekend. It's been really, really special, and we're holding Mamish at the last class. And I want to again take this opportunity to thank Rabbi Taub for coming out here and really, really, really giving it more than he was expected to do. He gave us his neshama. We worked him hard. Baruch Hashem. Thank you. I do want to mention the sponsor of the weekend, of the entire project, the J. Samuel Horowitz and Mana Horowitz Charitable Trust, for their assistance, for their sponsorship. And this should be Aliyah's Neshama for them, and to my dear friend Frank Lee for arranging that. Today we had a workshop in the morning, a parenting workshop, and I failed to mention the sponsor. My head was a little tired from Slichos, so I'm going to do that dedication retroactively and apply it to the class that we're learning, that we're going to have tonight. And that is an honor. It should be l'schus l'zeicha nishmas Avram Ber ben Shmerel HaKoyen. Other than that, I'd like to wish everybody a good gebenched yar, a Shana Tova Masuka, a really, really, really special good year. The goodness of this year should be so spectacular. Not just for the entire world as a whole, but to each and every one of you and every single Yid and every single person across the entire world. There should be so much light and so much laughter in the world this coming year. The laughter of Az Yamoles Choik Pinu. And hopefully we don't even have to wait till next week. Let it happen already now. And but the Shana that Haba Leino L'Taiva should be the best year ever, far on, and by leaps and bounds of everything we've had before. And now I'd like to call Rabbi Shais Taub for the final lecture he's giving for us tonight. Heal yourself, heal the world.
Okay. Let me just get comfortable here. Okay. All right. Hi. Everyone comfortable? I feel good? Yeah? Okay. All right. So there was this young husband. He'd been married for less than a year, and he was realizing the marriage was a little more difficult than maybe that he had thought, and he was in shul, and he saw this older gentleman who had been married for 50 years. And the young man, this younger man, he went over to the older fellow and he says, listen, I see you're married for 50 years. What's your advice? So the older fellow says, I'll tell you, the way it works in my family, my wife and I, is that we stay out of each other's business and we have an arrangement. I make the big decisions and she makes the small decisions, and that's that. The young man says, it works. And the old man says, thank God, past 50 years, no big decisions. Regarding the big decisions and the little decisions, there's a michtav klali. Maybe I should just explain. Hold on a second. Here. Now I'm comfortable. Okay. There's a michtav klali, an open letter that Rebbe used to write several times a year, an open letter addressed to all, thank you, all the sons and daughters of Israel, wherever they are. And one of the times that the Rebbe would send out such a letter was before Rosh Hashana. And one of the years, the subject of the letter, the Rebbe spoke about the unusual nature of Rosh Hashanah compared to all other Jewish holidays. In what way is Rosh Hashanah unusual compared to all other Jewish holidays? Well, you think about it like this. Pesach, Passover, that's when the Jewish people were redeemed from Egypt. Jewish people went out of Egypt, the Exodus, liberation of the Jewish people out of slavery. Okay. Shavuos, the Jewish people stood at Sinai. Jewish people received the Torah, became commanded in the 613 commandments. Sukkot commemorates also the Exodus, the clouds of glory, the protection, the shelter the Jewish people experienced in the wilderness 40 years between the Exodus and entering the promised land, the land of Israel. And then obviously you get into like the rabbinical holidays, Hanukkah and Purim. Hanukkah, the Jewish people overcame persecution. Purim, the Jewish people escaped annihilation. And all the Jewish holidays, and it's not really surprising, but all the Jewish holidays have to do with Jewish events, things that happened to the Jewish people. Rosh Hashanah is unique in that it does not commemorate something that's uniquely Jewish. To the contrary, what is Rosh Hashanah? Rosh Hashanah is the anniversary of the creation of Adam, the first human being. I don't say the first man, because Adam was neither a man nor a woman. A man is a ish. Adam means a earthling, actually. Adam is from the Adama, from the earth, taken from the earth. He was an earthling. He was neither male nor female, or maybe you could say he was both. It was both until it was separated into Ish and Isha, into man and woman. But Adam basically is the first human, the not male, not female, basically as general as you can get, and the progenitor, the ancestor of all, the common ancestor of all humanity. So basically, Rosh Hashanah is commemorating something that is pertinent to every single human being. And as such, because Rosh Hashanah has this global theme, this universal theme, you might expect that the way that we celebrate Rosh Hashanah should be also something very global, something very universal, something very macro, something big. Like maybe we should assemble some type, like a General Assembly of the United Nations. We get all the nations of the world and we come together and make some type of a meeting or something. And yet, what the Rebbe points out is the focus of Rosh Hashanah is introspective and on the individual. And the most poignant symbol of Rosh Hashanah being introspective and focused on the individual is, well, probably if you had to say what's the most quintessentially Rosh Hashanah experience, or if you were, I don't know, if you were teaching a bunch of little kids and you had to make Rosh Hashanah cards, little construction paper cards or something, and you needed some type of a symbol or an icon to represent Rosh Hashanah. Shofar, yeah. Scale, yeah, you could do a scale. But that's a little apple honey. But the first one I heard was shofar, and I think shofar is really, I mean, shofar is what it's all about. Shofar is the mitzvah. You know, shofar is one of the 613 commandments, and that's the commandment that we do on Rosh Hashana. The Rambam says, mitzvahs hayom b'shofar, that the mitzvah that you do on Rosh Hashana is shofar. And even for a little kid, what do you tell them? You tell them Rosh Hashana comes and you hear the shofar. Shofar is really the symbol of Rosh Hashana. Okay, we have other customs involved as well. Yeah, apples and honey, that's a custom. But shofar is really, that's the mitzvah. That's the big thing on Rosh Hashana. I always tell people, I mean, I know this crowd over here, you guys you're going to spend all day in shul. You're the expert daveners. But when I'm, in a Chabad house, let's say, where not everybody is necessarily coming to shul the whole day, or maybe not even keeping Yom Tov the whole day. Maybe they're coming from work and they're just going to do their Rosh Hashanah thing for an hour. I always tell them, make sure that you come during shofar. That's the most important thing. That's the central mitzvah of the day. At any rate, think about it like this. The shofar is an interesting instrument. This is what the Rebbe writes in this open letter. The Rebbe writes that the shofar, first of all, it's not a very versatile instrument. You can't really get too many notes out of it. I mean, you can break them up, the rhythm. That's how we do the different koilos of the shofar based on duration. But you can't really do scales on a shofar. It doesn't really produce too many different tones. And then, on top of that, the shofar is a solo instrument. In fact, according to halacha, you're not allowed to have an ensemble. You can't have two sounds. We make a bracha lishmaya koil shofar, singular, the voice of the shofar, not koilos. So the shofar is this really one-note instrument played as a solo. By the way, there was this couple who they weren't talking, just communication breakdown. And they went to a marriage counselor, and he tried to get them to talk, and they wouldn't talk. And the marriage counselor pulled out an electric bass, and he started playing the bass, boom, 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 boom. And the couple started talking. And they said, wow, we haven't spoken in years. How did you know that would work? And the marriage counselor says, everybody always talks during the bass solo. If you're a musician, you know that. It's okay. So the shofar is a solo instrument. So you have this one note, one instrument. And what's the message? The message is this. On a day that is the most universal, the most global, the way we want to focus our energy is in a way that is the most personal. You want to be macro, be micro. You want to be universal, be specific. That's the paradox of Rosh Hashana. In fact, in this letter, it's unusual that the Rebbe writes something like this, but in this letter, the Rebbe mentions rabbis, and he says he doesn't like when rabbis waste the opportunity, when they squander the potency of the day of Rosh Hashanah and talk about größer Weltproblemen, big world issues. Sometimes the rabbi is expected to give a political sermon, right? And he's going to give his commentary on global politics. The Rebbe said, I don't like that. That's a waste of the potency of the day. On Rosh Hashanah, you want to use it, you want to maximize it, you want to capitalize on the energy, specific, personal. So, Baruch Hashem, no big problems. No big decisions. Small decisions. Oh, you're going to say, oh, small decisions, that's easy. Small decisions are easy. Yeah, it is. Small decisions, yeah. Yeah, is that true? Small decisions are easy? You know about in the olden days of like communism, the Bolsheviks, they used to send indoctrinators around to preach communism in the countryside, try to convert the proletariat over to Marxist doctrine. So they used to have these preachers who'd go around and give basically sermons, you know, communist propaganda sermons. And so this communist indoctrinator, he goes to the countryside and he's talking to these farmers. And he says, comrade, he says to this little farmer, he says, let me see if you understand communism. If you had 2 cows, what would you do? He says, 2 cows? I keep 1 cow and I give 1 cow to the party. And the indoctrinator says, that's excellent, comrade. Okay, you have 2 goats, what do you do? And the little farmer says, if I have 2 goats, okay, let me see. I keep 1 goat and I give 1 goat to the party. And the indoctrinator says, that's excellent, that's splendid, comrade. Okay, you have 2 chickens, what do you do? And the farmer hesitates. And the indoctrinator says, comrade, 2 chickens, what do you do? And the farmer hesitates. Comrade, what do you do? He's hesitating. Doesn't want to answer. The indoctrinator says, comrade, I don't understand. 2 cows, and you're ready to give away 1 cow to the party. 2 goats, you're ready to give away 1 goat to the party. 2 little chickens, and now you hesitate? The farmer says, yeah, but I really have 2 chickens. So it's very easy to give away a cow that you don't have, or a goat that you don't have, but 2 chickens, now you're getting personal. I really do have 2 chickens. So it comes to Rosh Hashanah, yeah, we're going to fix the whole world. Okay, what are you going to do personally in your life? What small change can you make in your life on a day-to-day basis? Oh, hold on a second. I said I want to change the world. I want to change the world. Big decisions are easy. Small decisions, that's where it takes courage. That's where it takes willingness to change. And every one of us knows what our 2 chickens are. We know what it is that we actually have, and we really have the ability to make a decision, a difficult decision about. And it's not something that we can't apply in our lives right now. We can apply it, and that's what makes it so challenging and scary, because it's real. And we all know what it is. That thing you're thinking about right now, that you're hoping that that's not what I mean, that's exactly what I mean. That's what I'm talking about. That thing that came up to your mind right now, that is exactly what I'm talking about. But no, everybody's now, oh, no, Rabbi, I got something better. I'm giving $1 million to Rabbi Wolf. Okay, if you have $1 million, that's nice. But how about 2 chickens? Now you're getting personal. So the Rebbe writes in this Michtov Kloli, in this open letter, that if you really want to be global, get personal. The leverage that you have on Rosh Hashanah is dafka in individual growth. And the reason why that's so is for the very same reason why Rosh Hashanah is so universal. There's 2 ways of looking at it. Remember, Rosh Hashanah is universal because that's when humanity was created. Rosh Hashana is individual because that's when one person was created. In fact, the Talmud says this. Gemara in Sanhedrin, it asks, Lama nivra ha'adam yechidi. Why was man created alone? Why was there originally one human being? Lamedcha, to teach you that an individual human being is an entire world, is an olam mole. So for the very reason that Rosh Hashanah is universal, because that's when humanity was created, that's the same reason on Rosh Hashanah we have a special power to transform the world by transforming ourselves, because humanity began with one person. One person. You know the story of Yosef HaTzadik. Yosef HaTzadik was sold into slavery. His brothers hated him. They were jealous. They sold him into slavery. He ended up in Egypt. And he became an accountant. He wasn't a field slave. He was a house slave. And he worked in the home of his master, Potiphar. And Ashes Potiphar decided that she wanted him. And the Gemara describes that there was a real struggle. It was a real Nisayon. He went into the house, and there she was. She was waiting for him. She was relentless. And it was a struggle. And what gave him the strength? We're told that he saw his father. He saw the image of his father. And with this, he overcame. He had the strength to withstand the test. So what does that mean? Simple meaning is, you know, a young man thinks about his religious father who loves him and thinks so highly of him and invested so much in him, and he doesn't want to let him down. And I'm sure on one level that's true. Shivim panim l'Torah, the 70 facets to the truth. And on one level that's part of it. But Chassidus brings out another dimension, a deeper dimension. The Gemara tells us that Shufrei de Yankiv Avinu kein Shufrei de Adam HaRishon. Jacob was very beautiful. How beautiful? Well, the beauty of Jacob resembled the beauty of Adam. Adam was the most beautiful person because he was Yitzir Kapav Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He was the handiwork of God himself. And Jacob was beautiful. How beautiful? He looked like Adam. He looked like the first human. So this explains, here's a young man. He's presented with a moral test. And he starts thinking to himself, who's this going to affect? Who's going to know? Who am I killing? How far does this go? This is just something that it's a moral failing. It's a personal moral failing. Nobody's going to know but me and her. And who could really even judge me after a look at the situation that I'm in? Look at what was done to me. I was ripped away from my loving home, my father, sent to a foreign land. He had every excuse. And who even knows me here? They don't even know who I am. I'm a stranger in a strange land. And what does it matter? And Egypt is such a despicable place anyways. Everyone here is immoral. What? So one more sin will happen in Egypt. He had every rationalization in the world why it wasn't a big deal. And then he saw the face of his father, which is the face of Adam, and he stopped. And he remembered that Adam was one person. One person did one thing. And who else could it affect? It couldn't affect anybody else because there was nobody else. Talk about privacy. Talk about who am I hurting? There's no one else to hurt. One person, Adam, the first human being, did one thing that didn't affect seemingly anybody else because there was no one else there to affect. And from that one choice, eating from the tree of knowledge, he set into motion a ripple effect, the ramifications of which we are all still reeling from until this day. And at that moment, Joseph realized what an individual does is not a self-contained matter, that no man is an island, and that a decision made by one human being is really a decision for the entire world and the entire cosmos. We would like to think we are less significant than we are. We take comfort in the fact that we're just a cog in the wheel. And the truth is that from God's perspective, none of us are any different than the first human, than Adam. Every one of us, the Talmud tells us, Chayav Loimer is obligated to say, Bishvili nivra ha'olam, the world was created for my sake. It's as if I'm the only one here in the whole world. And that doesn't mean in the sense of entitlement. It means in the sense of responsibility. It all comes down to me, the whole world. My next moral choice that I think is just a personal decision. Who am I affecting? You're the world. Your personal choices affect the world. That's the lesson of Rosh Hashana. That humanity was created in one person. And what one person does affects all of humanity and all of the cosmos. And that's the shofar's message to us, to remind us that stirring noise of the one note from the one instrument, not a symphony, not an orchestra. One sound, one voice. Your two chickens. That little thing that you know already you got to do. You've known for a long time that you've got to do it. You want to do something massive? You want to do something of cosmic proportions? Think about your two chickens. What's teshuvah? What does it mean to be in a mode of teshuvah? Being ready for a new year? Very simple. Don't think big. Think small. And just considering, just the fact that you seriously, sincerely, in your own heart, this is but not between you and any other human being, just the fact that you are ready to consider dealing with the two chickens, that little thing, that itself is teshuvah. You know, the Baal Shem Tov came to the world at a time of crisis. the Jewish people were in a time of profound instability for various reasons. There was rampant poverty, there was bloodshed, pogroms, Chmielnicki massacres, Shabtai Tzvi, religious disillusionment, disenfranchisement of the common folk, elitism. It was a time of crisis, and really, retrospectively, it's one of those junctures in Jewish history. You know, Jewish history is a series of absolute flukes, where statistically, we shouldn't have made it past that juncture. And if you were to flip a coin 100 times in a row, and every single time it landed heads or tails, which one that you would call, that's basically the story of Jewish history. And the time the Baal Shem Tov came to the world was one of those times. We're basically, come on, we're bucking the odds already. Statistically, how many crises, how many perilous, precarious situations can we squeeze out of? And it was one of those times. And the Baal Shem Tov came to the world, and he had a message. And he had a message that rescued, that revived the Jewish people. And what was the Baal Shem Tov's message? What did he say to the Jewish world at this time of peril? There's a brighter tomorrow. Look at the glass half full, not half empty. You know, something optimistic, something encouraging. I don't know, maybe if he had speechwriters, that might have been what he would have said. That's not what the Baal Shem Tov said. The Baal Shem Tov came to the Jewish world at a time of peril, at a time of mass crisis. And here was his message. He said, every single Jew is beloved to God like an only child born to his parents in their old age. How did the Baal Shem Tov save the Jewish world? With a message of personal empowerment. You are God's only child. Don't look next to you. Don't look to the right. Don't look to the left. You are God's only child. But there's somebody over. Yeah, they're also God's only child. Don't worry about them. Worry about you. You are God's only child. And everything you do matters. And with that, the Baal Shem Tov rescued the Jewish world, and really continues to rescue the Jewish world. The teaching of the Baal Shem Tov, this teaching specifically, we underestimate our significance. We forget. What is infinity? God is infinite, right? Okay. So what does that mean? God is infinite. God is infinite. A guy once says to God, God, is it true that for you 1,000 years is a minute? God says, yes, 1,000 years is a minute. The guy says, God, is it true that for you $1 million is a penny? God says, yes, it's true. $1 million is a penny. The guy says, okay, God, can I have a penny? God says, yeah, in a minute. We tend to think of infinity as being so big, nothing's too big for it. So 1,000 years is a minute, $1 million is a penny. That's infinity, right? It's so big, nothing is too big for it. In fact, from the perspective of infinity, the whole galaxy is a grain of sand. And even more, because a grain of sand and a galaxy are actually proportionate to one another. There is some number, how many times bigger a galaxy is than a grain of sand. And infinity is infinitely bigger. There's no number. And that's true. But that's half of infinity, and half of infinity isn't infinite. What's the other half of infinity? That a grain of sand is a galaxy. Infinity is not only that for which nothing is too big. Infinity is that for which nothing is too small. So there's nothing so big that it would be overwhelming to God to handle. And there's nothing too small that it would be underwhelming for God to take notice of. To the contrary, from the perspective of infinity, nothing is insignificant. Everything is infinitely significant. And one person making one decision that has cosmic effects. That's a universe. That's the lesson of Rosh Hashana. You want to get universal, get specific. Well, like the environmentalists have the bumper sticker. Think global, act local, right? Is that what it says? Think global, act local. Acting local is thinking global. You want to change the whole world? Change yourself. In fact, don't even change your whole self. Change one thing that you do. 2 chickens. That's what Joseph saw when he was in Egypt. One moment, one decision, one action, cosmic ripple effect, changes the whole world for all time. For good or not for good. There was a father, he was a busy guy, a businessman. And he was so busy that he even had a home office and he would continue to work at home because he couldn't get enough work done at the office. And one day his little son, little 8-year-old boy, came over to him and said, "Daddy, I want to play." And the father said, "I'm busy right now. We'll play soon." He says, "Daddy, please, I want to play. You're always at work. You're always busy. You're home now. Please, let's play." The father said, okay, we're going to play. Just 1 second here." And he scanned around, and he saw a magazine. There was a magazine laid out on his desk. And on the cover of the magazine, there was a globe. A picture of a globe, you know, the world with the continents and the countries, a map, a world map. So he took the cover from the magazine, he tore it from the magazine, and he started tearing it up into little pieces, into 100 pieces, like confetti. And he took the torn up pieces of this magazine cover with this picture of the continents and the countries, and he put it into his little boy's hand, and he told him, "There, a puzzle, a jigsaw puzzle. When you finish the puzzle, then Daddy will come play with you." Now, the father's intention was, he knew this is a little boy. He hadn't studied geography. He didn't know what the world looks like, where the oceans are and the continents, let alone the countries and the borders. So he figured this is going to keep the boy busy for a long while. When you finish the puzzle, then Daddy will come play with you. 2 minutes later, the kid comes running back in his father's room, and he says, "Daddy, come play with me." The father says, how's it possible? The little boy says, come. So they go out of the father's office. They walk into the living room, and he looks at the dining room table, and he sees the magazine cover is intact. There's the whole world, the whole globe, perfect. How is it possible? The little boy says, the father says to the little boy, how did you do this? And the little boy says, "Daddy, I got to tell you something. That picture that you gave me, I don't really know what it looks like, but you see, there's another picture on the back," and he lifted it up. It was a magazine cover, and in the inside of the cover, there's always a full-page ad. So he says, on the other side, there's a picture of a man. I don't know what the world looks like, but I know what a man looks like. So that's how I did it. I actually did it upside down. And wouldn't you know it, when you put the man together, the whole world falls into place. This is the lesson of Rosh Hashana. One instrument, one note, one sound. The whole world comes down to one decision made by one person, and that person is you. No, not you, not you. You, just you. You're Hashem's only child. The Baal Shem Tov had a son-in-law named Rebbe Yechiel. Rebbe Yechiel had a nickname. They called him Der Deutschel, which means the little German, because he was a Yeke. He was a German Jew. The Baal Shem Tov lived in Poland, and his son-in-law, Rebbe Yechiel, was from Germany. Now, how did a German Jew end up in Poland? You know, there was a time, I don't know how far back people remember, but a German Jew and a Polish Jew, that was like an intermarriage. I have an uncle, a Russian Jew. He married a German Jewish girl. They always used to joke that it was an intermarriage, totally different. When a Russian Jew marries a German Jew, the wedding starts exactly 2 hours late. You know, the German Jew one time, he told his wife, he says, "Listen, I'm going to be home a little bit late for supper tonight because we're switching in Shmoneh Esrei from V'sein Bracha to V'sein Talu Mata Levracha. So I'll be a little bit later tonight for dinner." I'm going to have to retire these jokes about old cultural stereotypes that nobody remembers anymore, but I'm going to milk it for the next few years as long as I can get some mileage out of it. At any rate. So Rebbe Yechiel, the Baal Shem Tov's son-in-law, he was a Yeke, he was a German Jew. Now, there's a whole long story how he even ended up in Poland, and I'm not going to get into that, but I'll tell you part of the story, which is pertinent, is that one summer, he had been married already to the Baal Shem Tov's daughter for 5 years, and one summer he came to the Baal Shem Tov and he said, I have to go home. I made a deal with my father that I have to go home within 5 years. And this is the whole part of the story that I won't include, but he went home for he had to go home after 5 years. So it was the summertime. And he asked the Baal Shem Tov for a bracha, for a safe trip, and that he should return in time to be with the Baal Shem Tov for Rosh Hashana. It was the summertime. He figured he has enough time, get there, get back, be home, be with the Baal Shem Tov, be with his Rebbe for Rosh Hashana. And he asked for this bracha, and the Baal Shem Tov told him, bring a shofar. What does that mean, bring a shofar? It means probably that he's not going to make it back on time. Anyways, he went to Germany. There's a whole part of the story that I'll skip, but after he finished doing what he had to do, he heads back to Poland, and he's making good time. You know what happens anytime you're making good time, right? He's making good time, spectacular, right? And he takes a shortcut through a forest, and he gets kidnapped, and these pirates take him out to a river. From the river, they take him to the sea, and he doesn't even know where he is. He's being sold into slavery, and there's a storm, and it knocks over the boat, and all the pirates drown, and he swims to shore, and somehow he makes it to this island, this, as far as he knows, uninhabited island. And he's just thankful to be alive, and he has his stuff. He has his bag, and it has a shofar in it. His Rebbe told him, bring a shofar. He has a shofar, and according to his calculation, it's Erev Rosh Hashana. And there he is, Rosh Hashana, on this island, all by himself. So what is he going to do? It's Rosh Hashana. You do what you got to do. So he toiveled. He went to the mikveh. Where's the mikveh on an island? All around you. The whole shoreline is the mikveh. So he jumped in the water. He jumped out. And then he davened. Then the next morning he davened some more, and he sounded the shofar. And he didn't know, but there were people on that island, and they were watching him, and they thought he was crazy because they see a guy just survived a shipwreck. And what is he doing? He jumps in the water, he jumps out of the water, screams at the sky, he toots on a ram's horn, and he cries. The guy's crazy. So there was unbeknownst to him, there was a group of spectators who were staring at him. And the king of the island came by, and he saw his subjects were gathered around. And the king asked them, what are you doing? Why are you all assembled here? And they said, we're watching that guy. What guy? This stranger, he's crazy. What? How is he crazy? He jumps in the water, he jumps out of the water, he screams at the sky, he toots on a ram's horn, he cries, he's crazy. And the king said, oh, no, you know what? I've read about this. I never met a Jew, but I've read about them. He's not crazy. He's Jewish. I want to meet a Jew. Tell him. Go down there and you tell him I want him to come to the palace. So they went down to Rebbe Yechiel and they said, the king of this island wants you to come down to the palace. He says, what can I do? It's Rosh Hashana. It's Yom Tov. So they came back and they said, he can't do it. It's his holiday. He says, oh, yes, that's right. Tell him to come tomorrow. So they went back and said, come back tomorrow. He said, tomorrow's also a holiday. So they went back to the king. The king said, okay, I forgot. 2-day Yom Tov. That's fine. Okay. Tell him whenever he's done with his holiday, he should come to the palace. Okay, fine. No problem. So Yom Tov is over, and Rebbe Yechiel goes to the palace, and the king says to him, I've never met a Jew. I read about Jews. I never met a Jew, but I think I like them. I like you. I think I like Jews. So here's what I'd like to do. Could you get 400 Jews to come to my island and start a Jewish community? I think that would be nice. And Rebbe Yechiel says, I can't do that. And there's 2 reasons why not. Firstly, because I'm not like a politician or a governor or a leader of Jewish people that I can mobilize Jewish people. I can't just like get people to move. They don't do that. So that's the first reason I can't help you. He says, the second reason is that that's not how it works. You have to understand. The Jewish people are scattered all over the whole world. But there's a reason for that. And he starts explaining. He sees the king as a wise man. He says to him, look, that when God created the world, there's a certain amount of creative energy. These are the sparks of chaotic energy that fell to the world, and they're embedded in the physical world. And when Jewish people do mitzvahs, what's mitzvahs? Mitzvahs are physical actions that are commanded by God. And when we do that, it actually disencumbers, it dislodges, and then elevates the spiritual energy that's in the physical stuff. And basically the way it works is, he explains them Kabbalistically, that wherever there are these sparks, then God sends Jewish people to those places where they have to redeem those sparks. So basically that's how it works. That's how the diaspora works. So your request is really futile, because you want 400 Jews to come to this island, but that's not how it works. Jewish people don't go where they want to go. They think they go where they want to go. They think they chose. No, God makes it happen, and God will do whatever he has to do to get the Jewish people to the places where they have to go. So you don't have to ask for 400 Jews. If God wants 400 Jews to be on your island, then 400 Jews are going to end up on your island, even if they don't want to go. Even if they don't want to go, even if they have to be dragged here in chains as slaves, they will end up on this island. You don't have to do anything. So the king says, that makes sense. That makes sense. Fine, no problem. We'll arrange a boat for you. You can go home. So Rebbe Yechiel goes home, goes back to Mezhebush, goes back to Poland, to the Baal Shem Tov. Obviously, it's well after Tishrei by the time he gets home. And the first thing he does is he toivels and he prepares to go into Yechidus, one-on-one with his father-in-law, with his Rebbe, with the Baal Shem Tov. When he enters, the Baal Shem Tov looks very, very serious. And he says, Yechiel, this Rosh Hashana was a very, very difficult Rosh Hashana. When I was praying for the Jewish people, for good judgment for the year, and as I was dealing with all the different things that Jewish people need, I came to one issue that I just couldn't fix it. There was no prayer. There was nothing to rectify it. I just kept hitting a wall. You see, there was an issue. There's this place where an incredible amount of sparks of creative energy had fallen in the 6 days of creation. And in order to dislodge and elevate those sparks from that place, Jews needed to go there, and they needed to do mitzvahs. And this was a very far-flung place, actually. It was an island. And it was calculated in heaven that the only way to finish redeeming the sparks in that place was that 400 Jews were going to be dragged in chains as slaves to this place, and they would live there for generations until those sparks had been redeemed. And no matter what I did to plead on behalf of those neshamas so that they would not have to go into that exile within an exile, the decree stood. There were sparks. They're in this place. Neshamas are needed. 400 Jews dragged in chains as slaves to live on this island for generations, doing mitzvahs until finally they would refine the sparks. That's how it works. You know, that's how the diaspora works. That's why Jews go wherever they go in the world. They think they decide, they don't decide, they're sent. And nothing I did could reverse the decree, the Baal Shem Tov said. Until something suddenly changed. And it became clear in the heavenly court that on the day of Rosh Hashana itself, things were changing, things were shifting. What was happening? The sparks in this location were being elevated. How is it possible? It's a place where no Jew had ever set foot. And apparently what had happened is, by divine providence, God arranged that one Jew should spend Rosh Hashana in that place. And this one Jew, with his fervor, with his devotion, with his intensity, his prayers and his mitzvah of shofar and his teshuvah, this one Jew elevated all of the sparks in that place. And now no Jew ever needs to return to that place ever. And do you know who that Jew was? Yechiel. That Jew was you. My friends, we are no different. We are no different. Rebbe Yechiel was sent to the place where God needed him, each and every one of us in our lives at this moment in time, at this juncture in our development. We are exactly where God needs us, poised to redeem the last sparks, to complete our purpose, at least our purpose for the place where we stand, for the place in life that we've arrived at. Each one of us, you think about your journey. Think about your past. Think about all the twists and turns. Think about the story of your life that led you to the present moment, that led you to the circumstances where you are today. And think about the divine providence that orchestrated all of that to put you exactly in this place at this time to redeem some last vestige of creative energy. And that in doing so, and again, we're talking about your two chickens. Your two chickens. In doing so, in making that decision, that one decision that's personal to you, and no one in the world needs to know about it because God knows about it. In doing so, you don't just make a decision that affects you at this moment. You make a decision for the entire universe that affects all of us for all time. I will tell you one last story. It's one of my favorite stories. And it happened to a friend of mine. It actually tangentially involves Los Angeles, at least the airport in Los Angeles. The story happened to my friend Avrami Berkowitz when he was a bacher in yeshiva. He was on Merkez Shlichus. Merkez Shlichus is when yeshiva boys go for the summer. They go on temporary shlichus to far-flung communities that cannot yet sustain or may never sustain a permanent shliach. So Avrami Berkowitz and Levi Azimov went to Alaska for their summertime roving rabbi's stint. And on their last day in Alaska, they had a name of a Jewish woman, the only Jew known to live in this small town, 3 hours from Anchorage, and they calculated that if they would drive straight to this little town and they would meet her, they had just enough time. It was their last day of the summer to get back to Anchorage, get the flight to Seattle, Seattle to LA, LA to New York. So they rushed to the small town to find this one Jewish woman who lived in this town. Where did they look to find her? They knew one thing, that she was a school teacher. They went down to the school. And they asked for Mrs. So-and-so. And they said, yes, no problem, we'll get her. And the teacher came out of her classroom, came down to the principal's office, and there are two young men, yeshiva bachrim, Lubavitcher boys, beards, hats, and they say to her, we're here on a special shlichus, on a mission from the Lubavitcher Rebbe, and we're here to meet Jews, and we heard that you live here. And we'd like to know what we can do to help you, to enrich your Jewish experience. And she's talking to them, and she starts to tell her story. She grew up in Brooklyn. And what happened is she started wandering, she started traveling. She traveled the world, and she came to Alaska, and she met an Eskimo. And she married an Eskimo. And she moved to his hometown, and she became a school teacher. And they had a daughter. The daughter is 6 years old. Avrami looks to Levi. He says, hold on a second. There's not one Jew in this town. There are two Jews. You have a daughter? A 6-year-old daughter? You're Jewish. You're the mother. Your daughter's Jewish. Where is she? The woman says, she's in school. Where? Which school? The lady says, there's only one school for 100 miles here. This is it. Great. She's in this building? Yeah. Can we see her? Sure. We'll call her out of class. So the mother says, I'm going to get back to my classroom and I'll have my daughter come see you. So Avrami tells me he's standing there, he's thinking to himself, this little 6-year-old girl has only ever seen one other Jew in her entire life, other than herself. What does she know about Jews? She's about to meet 2 yeshiva boys. She's about to double the number of Jews she's ever seen in her entire life. And he has a minute. They've got to get back to Anchorage, to Seattle, to LA, to New York. They got minutes before they've got to go. But this is life-changing. This is, what's he going to tell this girl, this 6-year-old girl? What message can you possibly tell somebody who possesses this infinite neshama? What message can you tell her in 1 minute that will do justice to the news? Just the hugeness of the news that he's going to tell her. You know, you're Jewish and you have a mission to fulfill, and you're one of God's chosen people, and there's a Torah, and we're here to perfect the world, to bring Mashiach. Where do you even begin? She knows nothing, and there she is. She's walking in the door, and Avrami thinks to himself, Rebbe, you sent me here. You give me the lines. I'm going to open my mouth and start talking. You give me the lines. So he starts talking. He doesn't know what he's going to even say. He's listening to himself. And he says to her, do you know what these are? And he realizes he's holding the Shabbos candles, you know. Shabbos candles, tea lights. Do you know what these are? Candles. Do you know what they're for? Light. So he starts rolling. Every Friday afternoon, before sunset, Jewish women and girls all over the world light candles. And God watches. And the first place that the world lights up, the first place the sun sets every Friday, is in Australia. And God watches the world. These little lights pop up in Melbourne and Sydney. And then it's quiet for a while. And then there's some lights that pop up in South Africa. And then you get, now the sun is setting over Israel. Bunch of lights, huge lights, millions of lights, very bright. And then the sun is setting over Europe. Some lights here, some lights there. Paris, a lot of lights. London, lots of lights. Then it's quiet for a while. It's going, sun is setting over the Atlantic. Then the sun sets in New York. A lot of big lights again. Lots of lights, millions of lights. Jewish women and girls lighting those candles. And God is watching this. God is watching the whole world. And he watches each of these places on the globe light up, one by one. Another light, a big one here, a medium one there, a small one there. And then the sun is setting in the middle of the United States, and there's a big light in Chicago. And then finally the sun sets in California. You see lights coming from Los Angeles, Shabbos candles lighting up. And then pretty much over. There's not much else, not a lot of lights anymore. But the sun is still setting. And God is still watching. God's watching the world because it's not done yet. It's not done yet. God's still watching. God's watching the sun continuing to set. Because God's watching because the sun is still setting. And God watches until the farthest western place in the world where there is a Jewish girl lights the last Shabbos candle. And the sun sets over Alaska, all the way out here, 3 hours west of Anchorage. And do you know who the last Shabbos candle, the last little Jewish girl in the whole world that God waits for and watches every single week is? It's you. Infinity is that for which nothing is too big and nothing is too small. You want to change the world, change yourself. Put the man together, the world falls into place. One sound, one instrument, one note. All of humanity, one person. God has an only child. You are God's only child. And you don't have to be geographically the farthest west Shabbos candle in the whole world. It doesn't make a difference. Wherever you are, it's as if you're the only one. You're God's only child. And He watches and He waits for your light as if He's not interested in anything else in the entire creation. All He's focused on one thing. He's focused on you. We should all have the humility to realize how great we are. Don't be afraid of considering the 2 chickens. Don't be afraid of changing yourself and changing the entire world. When you're in shul next week, and you hear the shofar, and you hear the one sound, the one note, the one instrument, just remember that. It takes one person, takes one action to change the entire world. That person is you. Okay, ksivach simatova.
I'm going to shut it down.
May I stand here?
Yes.